evening. You're watching Just the News. I'm Amita Balachandra. Let's get straight to our top story. We're beginning with the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Russia has invaded Ukraine, and it's day two of the attack. Kremlin spokesperson today has said that Russia is ready for talks with Ukraine on neutrality in Minsk. Now, this is according to Russian state media. But he also said that this would have to be about Ukraine declaring a neutral status, which would include demilitarization. Now, Russia has all along wanted Ukraine to rule out of joining NATO. Earlier today, Russian foreign minister has also said that Moscow would be ready to hold talks with Kyiv, but only once Ukraine's military had laid down its arms. Meanwhile, an update on the number of people who've been killed in Ukraine. Ukraine has claimed at least 137 Ukrainians have been killed after Russia's attack. President Zelensky said that over 316 people have been injured. According to the UN, at least 25 civilians have been killed and 102 people injured in airstrikes across the country. In the meantime, UK Armed Forces Minister has told MPs in the House of Commons that 450 Russian soldiers and 194 Ukrainians, including 57 civilians, have been killed since the Russia's attack has begun. Russian state media has quoted the Defense Ministry of Russia as saying that 200 troops from Ukraine's special units were killed, adding that there were no Russian losses. However, Ukraine claims that 1,000 Russian servicemen have been killed so far in this conflict. The ministry has said, and I quote, Russia has not suffered so many casualties during the fighting in any of its armed conflicts since its inception, end quote. Meanwhile, Ukrainians have it quite bad. There have been several reports showing Ukrainians now taking refuge in underground shelters, including bomb shelters, including metro stations and subways. According to AFP, Ukrainians fleeing their home country crossed over into neighboring Poland, mostly by car. Fears are mounting over a possible refugee crisis in the region in the wake of the Russian invasion. According to a report by the BBC, Interior Minister advisor has said that 18,000 machine guns have been handed out in Kyiv to all volunteers and all those who want to defend, and I'm quoting him, our capital with weapons in their arms. He went on to say, and I quote, Ukrainian military equipment is entering Kyiv now to defend it. I'm asking all residents, please do not film it, do not film its movements. This is necessary to protect our city, end quote. Meanwhile, there have been multiple televised addresses by Ukrainian president, the latest being his accusation that European leaders have not been acting enough. Now, he asked Europeans to, and I quote, demand from your governments that Ukraine receive more financial, more military aid, end quote. Ukraine has also said that Russian forces were approaching Kyiv from the north and the east. Now, this is how the world is reacting to this invasion, starting off with India. India is planning to evacuate citizens from Ukraine through Poland, Romania, Hungary, and Slovak Republic. Now, Ukraine shares its western border with these countries. Foreign Secretary Harshvardhan Shringla has said that of the estimated 20,000 Indians in Ukraine, about 4,000 of them have managed to leave so far. Meanwhile, there's a PTI report that says that Air India is planning to operate 2 flights to Romanian capital today to evacuate Indians stranded in Ukraine. Indian nationals who've reached the Ukraine-Romania border by road will be taken to this capital by officials of the Indian government so that they can be evacuated in the 2 Air India flights. Meanwhile, Russia has said today that it expects support from India at the UN Security Council when the global body takes up a crucial resolution on the Russian military operation in Ukraine. Now, the UN Security Council is scheduled to vote on a draft resolution on Russia's military operation in Ukraine, as well as the escalating situation in the Eastern European country. Meanwhile, according to the BBC, an official for the EU has said that the bloc has decided to freeze European assets held by Russian President and Foreign Minister. It's unclear, however, the report said, that if either of them hold any significant assets in the EU. Now, interestingly, according to Chinese state television CCTV reports, China's President Xi Jinping told Vladimir Putin that China supports Russia in efforts to resolve the Ukrainian crisis via dialogue. Earlier, the Chinese Foreign Ministry had declined to call the Russian offensive an invasion. There have been additional sanctions that have been imposed by the US. In its latest sanctions, the US has targeted all 10 of Russia's largest financial institutions and imposed export control measures that will more than halve Russia's high-tech imports. Now, the White House unveiled measures to isolate Russia from the global financial, tech, and trade system. There are other countries that have imposed sanctions on Russia, such as the UK, Japan, Canada, Germany, among others. Meanwhile, in Russia, defying police warnings, people took to Central Square in Russia and protested against the military campaign. Some arrest as well. According to reports, over 1,000 people were later detained. The crowds chanted no to war. The UN chief has said that protected civilians is the #1 priority. He also called on the global community to uphold international humanitarian and human rights standards amid concern over the growing number of refugees fleeing fighting in Ukraine. Also, according to the BBC, the Ukrainian capital Kyiv has reported missile strikes, tanks, and several buildings were also hit. Tanks were seen entering the city and several sounds of gunfire echoed in the capital. Now, this is the developing story. We're going to continue to track this story and bring you regular updates. Moving on from this, on to COVID roundup right now. Delhi Disaster Management Authority has decided to lift all restrictions imposed in the national capital. It has also allowed schools to discontinue online or hybrid classes in favor of physical classes from the 1st of April. Now, Delhi will also lift all COVID curbs that were imposed. The authority has also reduced the fines imposed by for mask violations and non-adherence to social distancing to 500 rupees from the earlier 2,000 rupees. Meanwhile, the European Union has approved Moderna's anti-COVID vaccine for children aged 6 to 11. Now, this is the second vaccine to be approved for younger children. Earlier, Pfizer's COVID vaccine was approved for the same age group. And in other news, starting off with the hijab controversy, after hearing the matter for 11 days, the Karnataka High Court has now reserved its verdict in the batch of petitions filed by Muslim girl students challenging the government order, which effectively bans the wearing of hijab in educational institutions in the state. Now, the petitioners had also filed an appeal before the Supreme Court against the interim order, but the top court is yet to hear the same. And an update now on the Bajrang Dal member murder case. A local court in Karnataka, as of today, has sent all 10 accused arrested on charges of murdering Bajrang Dal member Harsha to police custody for 10 days till the 7th of March. Now, the accused were produced before the court of the Second Judicial Magistrate, First Class, and the police requested their custody for investigation. Harsha was murdered on the 20th of February. Subsequently, there was reports of stone pelting the next day during his funeral procession as well. There was Section 144 of the CRPC that was imposed in Shivamogga as well. An update now in the Nawab Malik arrest case. 2 days after being arrested in a money laundering case, NCP Minister Nawab Malik was admitted to JJ Hospital in Mumbai today. Now, the main reason for admitting him is not yet known. ED officials had arrested Nawab Malik in a money laundering case that was registered against underworld don and fugitive Dawood Ibrahim and his aides. Also, in politics, now in the fourth phase of UP elections on Wednesday, a voter turnout of 60.1% was recorded in polling across 59 constituencies in Uttar Pradesh. Now, the counting of votes for all five states will be held on the 10th of March. Moving on to business news right now. Former National Stock Exchange Group Operating Officer Anand Subramanian, whose appointment was allegedly among the decisions influenced by Yogi living in the Himalayas, was arrested by the CBI late Thursday night in a case involving stock market manipulation. Now, Anand Subramanian was first appointed as Chief Strategic Advisor in the NSE in 2013 and then promoted as Group Operating Officer in 2015 by then Managing Director Chitra Ramakrishna. SEBI had charged Chitra Ramakrishna and others with alleged governance lapses in the appointment of Subramanian and his outsized promotion. On to sports news right now. Formula One announced today that it will not race in Russia this season, saying it was impossible to do so after the country launched an invasion on neighboring Ukraine. The race was scheduled for the 25th of September at Sochi's Olympic Park. And one piece of good news before we wrap things up here on this bulletin. This comes in from Karnataka. The Karnataka government has decided to reserve 1% of jobs in the teaching sector for transgender members. Now, this is the first time in Karnataka's history that candidates from the transgender community will be employed in the education department. So although that number is small, it is quite significant considering it is the first time. It's also announced that this in the draft rules notified for the recruitment of 15,000 teachers to various government schools across the state. That brings us to the end of this bulletin. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.